Thou was right.
I've been working for Uber for 3 years now,
Damn.
but it's been a year since the incident. That day started out like any other day. I prefer to drive later in the day. I found it to be more profitable, plus it gave me the morning to get things that I needed to be done all taken care of. I typically started my day off driving around 4 in the afternoon and would wrap it up between 10 and midnight, depending on how the day was going. As I mentioned, everything had started out normal that day. I had a few trips around dinner time, and the rest of the night was taking people to various places like restaurants and bars. I could feel myself getting a bit tired, and I saw that it was about to be 10 p.m., and I figured I would take one last fare and then call it a day. And to my luck, someone needed to be picked up from the shopping plaza that I was next to. Their destination appeared to be in the middle of nowhere,
Oh my God.
but I simply assumed it was where their house was. I accepted the ride and headed to the pickup location. When I got there, 2 men were waiting for me, and they promptly hopped into the car and greeted me with smiles. Everything seemed pleasant at first. We made small...
I would have said, "Clock that smile shit. The destination is in the middle of nowhere." Plus, y'all talking about what's going on, what's up? What's up? What's up?
talk as we continued to drive, and in about 20 minutes I was coming up to their destination. But I was confused as we pulled into a small dirt road that led to a gated off empty field. Before I could turn to ask the men if this was their destination, I felt the cold steel of a gun barrel being pressed into the back of my neck. From behind me, I heard one of the passengers say, "Don't make any moves, and this can all go nice and smoothly." I did my best to stay still, aside from the involuntary shaking that was caused by the stressful situation. I heard the other door in the back open up, and the other passenger made his way to the driver's door. I was told to unlock the door slowly before I was ultimately ripped out of the front seat of my car. Before I could react to being thrown to the floor, I could feel the man's boot as he began kicking and stomping down on my upper body. I could hardly catch my breath as I curled into a ball and lay on my side, doing my best to protect as much of myself again. I could feel one of them as they began pulling everything out of my pockets. I began to plead with them not to do this when I heard the sound of a gunshot. I flinched and fell silent. I didn't think I was hit, but something told me to play dead. The moments that passed felt like an eternity, but before I knew it, I could hear the sound of the 2 men getting into my car and driving off. I stayed on the ground for a moment until I was sure that it was clear for me to get up. It was a 40-minute walk before I managed to find a gas station where I was able to call the police from. My car was never found, but thanks to insurance, I was able to get another one at only a small cost and continue to earn with Uber. I am, however, much more cautious about my surroundings and the destinations of who I pick up.
Your destination was the middle of nowhere. Come
Before
on.
taking a job at the warehouse near my home, I used to drive for Uber. I took my last fare on the same night I was held at gunpoint. You see, I had picked up a rider who requested a pickup from an apartment complex, and they were looking for a ride to the train station. It was a 15-minute ride, and I figured it would be quick and simple. I admit, though, I was a bit confused when the man who was supposedly going on the train didn't have any bags, luggage, or even a briefcase with him. I don't get paid to ask questions, though, so once he was in the car, I just began to drive. We were on the road for about 5 minutes before I could help but noticed that there was a police car following relatively close behind us. I figured they were just reading my plates and running them through the system, and since I had nothing to worry about, I just kept on driving. After another few moments, though, I noticed that the single car that was following us had now turned into 3 different police cars. It was at this point that my passenger also noticed the convoy behind us, and I will never forget the sound of his voice when he asked me, "Please don't stop." His tone was a mixture of what seemed like anger and fear. I don't know why he would ask that, but then out of nowhere, I saw the flashing lights turn on behind us. I knew it was risky at the time, but as soon as I saw an opening in traffic, I pulled my car to the side of the road and turned it off. The man in the backseat began yelling at me, asking me why I would do that. He kept yelling for me to start the car, and when I refused, I felt his hands grip around my neck. It was like everything was being squeezed out of me. I couldn't catch my breath. I began to struggle, but there was no use, as all of the light began to fade from around me. I saw the barrels of multiple police officers' firearms pointing toward my car. The next thing I knew, I was waking up on the side of the road as the paramedics were shining a light in my eyes. The police then explained that the man I had picked up was wanted for the murder of 3 different people. Police got a tip about him living at the apartment and actually pulled up to arrest him just as he was getting into my car. They said if I had made it to the train station, it's likely they wouldn't have found him for quite some time. And I know that odds of something like that happening to me again are 1 in a million. But that was the day I decided to find a different line of work. I didn't like the thought of dealing with strangers in my car anymore.
But even if he did get on a train, can't the officers just stop the train? Or can they not stop the train? I'm just saying, you have a criminal on the train. Just saying.
I used to not think twice about calling for an Uber or a Lyft, especially when it came to a night out drinking. I'd much rather pay $25 for someone to pick me up and drive me home than risk getting into an accident and hurting someone by drunk driving. At one point, though, I had become too comfortable with the process of getting into an Uber, so much so that I almost ended up getting taken by someone who had no association with the ride-sharing app. I was out drinking and having a decent night out with a couple of friends, and when the night came to a close, I hailed an Uber on my phone, and within 10 minutes, I got the notification that the driver had arrived. Now, typically, when you get an Uber, it tells you the make and model of the car that's picking you up, along with the license plate number. Well, I didn't look at the plate, and instead got into a car that I thought was my Uber. I was expecting a Honda Accord and mistakenly got into a Sonata. Now, normally, I would expect the person to kick me out of their car and let me know that I was being a drunken idiot and got into the wrong car. But instead, they simply asked me, "Uber?" To which I respond, "Yeah." And before long, we were on the road. The man driving the car asked me to please buckle my seatbelt, which I did without question, and I then began to drift off while looking out of the window. It took me way longer than it should have to realize that the direction that we were heading was nowhere near my house. It took me about 10 minutes to realize that we were heading into the opposite direction entirely. I brought this up with my driver, wondering if he was trying to get a longer fare out of me. But instead, things got terrifying. The man in the driver's seat chuckled to himself and then looked over his shoulder at me. With a big smile on his face, he said, "You should be more careful on who you get into cars with." I immediately unbuckled my seatbelt and began pulling and tearing at the door handle. It didn't budge though, and my feeble attempts only made the man laugh harder. I figured the child lock must have been engaged. As we continued to drive along, I couldn't help but wonder what the man's plan might have been. It was my luck though, as we pulled up to a red light and he actually stopped. We were on a multi-lane road, and another car happened to pull up beside us. Without thinking about it, I began banging on the window, screaming at the top of my lungs for help. I was yelling about being trapped and the child lock. It only took a second for the car next to us to realize what had happened. And I don't know if the terrified look on my face was proof enough about what was happening, but the driver of the car next to us hopped out and managed to open the door that I was trapped behind. I hopped out of the car I was locked in and quickly ran into the car with the driver who had potentially saved my life. To my surprise, the man who trapped me in the first place didn't try to pursue me at all. Instead, he pulled off as soon as I was out of his car. As soon as I caught my breath, I placed a call to the police and met up with the officers to give my statement. As of right now, there has been no sign of a Hyundai Sonata or the man who was driving it.
I'm not even gonna hold you. You said that you hopped into the other person's car. At that point, I would have been like, I'm done with getting in random people's cars, even if it is Uber or Lyft. You know, I'm done with it. I would have just hopped out his car, said thank you. Then I just would have ran to like the nearest, safest location. I highly doubt me, Gattor, would hop into another person's car that I don't know. Just saying. And if you're doing like Uber or Lyft or any ride sharing, and the destination, first of all, if you're gonna do it, at least do it like during the day. Like I said in another video, doing something or going somewhere during the day or at night is two different things. So if I was Ubering and I saw the destination said the middle, okay, the destination probably didn't say the middle of nowhere. It probably had an address, but the address was in the middle of nowhere. I would have either canceled that or stopped short of the destination. I don't know. But then again, they had a gun to his head, so you can't really do much. All I'm saying is, if you're doing Uber or Lyft, which I don't suggest, but if you're going to do it, keep both eyes open and not just on the road, and be strapped, be ready, and watch your motherfucking surroundings. Keep it cool, keep it classy, and I love you, stay happy, my family.